If you ain't real, get the fuck away. Fuck away.
Welcome to this new episode of Fact Heist. On this installment, we will discuss the gnarly effects nicotine has on the brain and why you shouldn't smoke, ever. So as any video about tobacco or some shit, I think I am supposed to start with same old stuff like tobacco is the average common term used to describe any kind of product coming from the cured leaves of this tobacco plant thing. Tobacco has long been used, its consumption has been considered to start around a long while ago, because, in the Americas, some cultivation sites can date back to 1400 to 1000 BC, I told you, a long while. In some native culture, tobacco could be smoked socially, but also ceremonially, because it was, back then, considered as a gift from some kind of creator.
They called him Kukulkan,
because they believed that this holy smoke would carry thoughts and prayers and wishes straight to the creator.
feather serpent god.
And then,
White man came across the sea. He brought us pain and misery. He killed our tribes. He killed our creed. He took our game for his own need.
come on, don't panic. There's some mass murdering of turkeys once a year for forgiveness. So we're even now? We cool, right? But I digress. So yes, with the arrival of European Übermenschen, tobacco became some highly popular trade item. And from that point, as everyone knows, everything went smooth and chill. As almost every other video, we could talk about the evolutionary features of the plant, like its insecticidal properties. And nicotine is indeed excessively toxic to insects. Not toxic like nuclear waste type of shit, but more like neurotoxic type of shit. Because the chemical structure of nicotine is highly similar to the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. More on that one later. So this acetylcholine-like extravaganza will trigger an overstimulation of the nervous system, eventually driving to the death of the bad bug invaders. So as its main function is to protect the tobacco plant, nicotine has been used as pest control for a long time. And effectively, it seemingly repels some
I'm out of here.
of the bugs. Tobacco is also responsible of around 500 people's death each year. No wait, that's 500,000 people each year. So yeah, that sounds like a lot. Mainly because cigarettes contain hundreds of ingredients, for real, which many of them are proven to provoke cancer. No shit. Depending on the brand, the recipe will include stuff to improve taste, decrease harshness, and increase absorption. On the real, shit like menthol to numb the throat or ammonia to increase nicotine intake in the lungs. Gnarly. Along with many more like acetone, arsenic, what the tar, I mean not like for asphalt or highway, but more like the acronym for total aerosol residue, which may sound better, but definitely not that far from this asphalt and highway thing. But cigarettes also contains carbon monoxide, soy sauce, wait, maybe not that last one.
I don't know what's in them. I just know I can't stop smoking them.
So I think we covered the same old common usual shit about nicotine everyone knows and nobody cares about anymore.
Major bar and shed. Let's do something a little more fun.
As a matter of fact, most people understand very well how smoking cigarettes affects the lungs and heart and throat and shit, but not so many know about the impact those death sticks can have on the brain. In the collective unconscious, and especially in younger people, cigarettes carries the idea that it makes you look older, tougher, more in control, more independent, empowered, all this social illusions bullshit.
Puff with us! Puff with us! Puff with us!
And it kinda works. I gave it a try when I was 6 months old, and as you can tell, I already looked like I was a couple weeks older. You have to understand that it was a way different era, don't judge me, but I digress. And for teenager boys, it makes you look more like manly, such a goal to achieve.
What makes a man? Is it the woman in his arms? Just cause she has big titties? Or is it the way he fights every day? No, it's probably the titties. Now you're a male. Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh. Now you're a my, oh. My, oh my, oh. Now you're a male. M-A-N, man. Now you're a moron.
And indeed, despite this popular belief, smoking doesn't make you look like as dope as Robert De Niro, not even some of his mafia henchmen or whatever, no, not even close. Instead, smoking makes you look French, at best, So you'd better stop that shit right now.
Who needs Paris? This is our city of lights.
But that's not the only ugly side effect of cigarette smoking. Let's start by stating the obvious. Again, nicotine is the main psychoactive component of tobacco, faux show. And once you pull a drag off a cigarette, the smoke travels from the windpipe to the lungs, faux show, and from there, straight into the bloodstream. Once this nicotine-loaded blood reaches the headpiece, it crosses the blood-brain barrier. This thing, that's a barrier of cells, so close together, they prevent pathogens and shit to go from the bloodstream, into neurons, hence the name, blood-brain barrier. But nicotine doesn't give any fucks and crosses this obstacle anyway. Now that nicotine is into place, only 10 seconds after inhalation, it can interact with a shitload of receptors and a shitload of neurons in the central nervous system. However, its main thing is to go to the midbrain, this thing, to bind to acetylcholine receptors. But apparently nicotine has its own tastes, and has a higher affinity for alpha-4 beta-2 nicotinic acetylcholine receptors. Despite acetylcholine being the natural ligand for these receptors, nicotine will bind anyway and act as an agonist, meaning it will interact with these receptors, triggering something to happen. Just like a lock into a key. Side note, for the science no-lifers like me, the alpha-4 beta-2 nicotinic acetylcholine receptors chill on the post and presynaptic neurons, and are made of 2 alpha-4 and 3 beta-2 subunit. But the opposite is possible, with 3 alphas and 2 betas. Anyway, that's 5 subunits. I think this drawing explains it all very well.
You shouldn't tell people that stuff, it makes you sound like a loser.
This kind of circular structure acts as an ion channel. An ion bin some atom who has lost an electron and then become positively charged. But the opposite is possible, as it can gain an electron, hence becoming now a negatively charged ion. I think this drawing explains it all very well. So, when 2 molecules of nicotine engage a docking procedure on those receptors binding sites, like a key into a lock, remember, this triggers the ion channel to open, allowing the channeling of ions, allowing the passage of potassium, sodium and calcium ions. Once the amount of these ions reach some threshold, this initiates then an action potential, aka the firing of a neuron. In this case, the electric signal is transmitted down the axon, the tail of the neuron, straight to the reward center above the brain. There, these electric impulses set off the release of various neurotransmitters, including, you've guessed it, dopamine. Because when activated, nicotinic receptors turn on some neurons that innervate the ventral tegmental area, the main dopamine factory of the brain. In fact, nicotine can even modulate the firing rate of the ventral tegmental neurons. Then this tegmental thing squirts its precious rewarding dopamine through the limbic system, a set of brain structures that mainly processes emotions, mostly right into the nucleus accumbens. This reward circuitry thing is known as the mesolimbic dopamine pathway. Meso meaning middle, so literally the middle of the limbic system. You're welcome. If, for some reason, you want to understand dopamine and this whole reward system even better, check our episode about it, link up there. As dopamine stimulates this reward system circuitry thing, this generates then short-term feelings of well-being, fuzziness, and therefore, satisfaction. When this dopamine surge happens, several other neurotransmitters can also be released in various brain structures, like norepinephrine and serotonin for example. In fact, nicotine acts as some kind of volume control on those neurotransmitters. And because of the wide availability of nicotinic acetylcholine receptors throughout the nervous system, nicotine can trigger a large variety of outcomes, like motor and sensorial effects, but also more cognitive shit, like improved mood, increased attention, learning and memory. However, nicotine is eliminated rather quickly. Its half-life in the human body been around 2 hours. And it is mainly excreted inside urine. Urine is the scientific term for piss. And urine concentration, because I can sense that this is really relevant and interesting to you. So urine concentration of nicotine can vary, depending on urine pH and urine flow. Fascinating, I know. You're welcome. And then, as nicotine levels decline, dopamine levels decline too, resulting in a craving for more nicotine. After a while, those continued tobacco shots convince the brain that it's normal to have such high nicotine levels everywhere around. And as almost every time, the human brain will undergo some complex adaptive changes. Indeed, alpha-4 beta-2 nicotinic receptors will upregulate. Upregulation is the process of increasing things. In this case, those neuroreceptors. Therefore, over time, there's a stronger need for nicotinic stimulation to reach the same levels of reward, because all these downstream changes led to desensitization. So you need more of that shit to get the same dopamine kick. The thing is, compared to other drugs, nicotine is unusual in the way that it is some kind of stimulant, but can become some kind of sedative with increasing dosage, because nicotine will dampen neuronal activity. This phenomenon is known as Nesbitt's paradox. You're welcome, and if you like to go even bigger, at high toxic dose, it can induce contractions and respiratory paralysis. Somehow, nicotine also induces the release of endogenous opioids, that's some opioid peptides, or small proteins, naturally originating from within the human body.
They occur naturally in the body, like sweat or tumors.
They are part of some innate pain-relieving system or some shit. This discharge of endogenous opioids will then activate some opioid pathway thing in the reward system. This event, as well, is considered to be responsible for the reinforcing effects of nicotine. The chemical, when binding to said receptors in the adrenal medulla, also triggers the sympathetic nervous system. This fight or flight response to stress thing, you know. This kinda naturally built-in application that will releases epinephrine and norepinephrine into the bloodstream, hence the stimulant effects, resulting in increase in respiration, blood pressure, heart rate, and higher blood glucose levels. The intake of nicotine often happens in the absence of euphoria. Nevertheless, mild euphoria can be reported by some wimpy individuals. Sounds good so far. But there's no free lunch, because all of those delights comes with nasty side effects. Some varying degrees of nastiness you already probably know about, like lightheadedness, headaches, irritability, dizziness, loss of smell because of the damaged nerve endings in the nose, sleep disturbances, abnormal dreams. Yeah, but what's a normal dream? And also more serious stuff like cardiovascular diseases, cancer, or smoke in the eyes. I won't list them all because we all know that smoking.
Fucking smoking is like, smoking is like, you're gonna die from fucking smoking is like, fuck you and your fucking smoking, fucking criticism.
But at a more cellular level, I mean neuronal level, after messing up with nicotinic acetylcholine receptor in the first place, nicotine will then cause them receptors to become less responsive to the drug. Because of the upregulation, this increase in receptors in the synapses thing, you know, and because the receptors become desensitized, this then creates the development of a tolerance for this drug. And then, those now many alpha-4 beta-2 receptors represent now more mouths to feed with nicotine for the brain. So whenever a lower dose or nothing at all is then inhaled, this will lead to symptoms of withdrawal. Because your brain is now asking to return to its new baseline, its new normal level of stimulated receptors. And this increase in the number of alpha-nicotinic receptors thing is thought to play, indeed, a role in this withdrawal phenomena. At least, that's what the National Institute of Health says. Withdrawal with varying symptoms and side effects including irritability, attention deficit, anxiety states, and a fucking powerful craving for nicotine, of course. At that point, unfortunately, it has become harder to struggle with some of those symptoms than to reach for another smoke.
You've got me. For the rest of your life, I'll be the first thing you think about every morning, and the last thing you do every night.
The neural changes happening because of this feedback loop creates then the dependence on nicotine.
Trying to cut down myself.
However, never forget that too much repetitive stimulation of the mesolimbic dopamine pathway could be dangerous. Just like the Shaolin and the Wu-Tang could be dangerous. This reward pathway was designed, probably by some higher power, so it was built to reward the body with pleasurable sensations for important behaviors that are supposed to be essential for survival, like eating, sex, scrolling on Instagram, you name it. But chronic tobacco consumption will produce those repetitive dopamine surges that can end up desensitizing the dopamine system, making it less responsive to everyday usual stimulations. As a result, nicotine can turn a person's average needs into tobacco needs. And since the body obviously adapts to rising dopamine levels, then more and more nicotine is needed to reach the same pleasurable kick.
Where's a stab from every breath that reminds me I'm alive?
So nicotine is bad, right?
Don't smoke! Don't ever smoke!
But as the average cigarette can bring in more than 5,000 chemical substances. Sounds like a lot. Nicotine won't be the only culprit matter to blame for addiction. There's actually another low-key player in the game, acetaldehyde. That's a colorless liquid you can mix with basically anything, and has a synergistic effect with nicotine. The human smell device can detect it quite easily. Its odor seems to be fruit-like, and becomes suffocating like some kind of mace pepper spray or some shit at high dose. It is also highly flammable, with a boiling point of only 20 degrees Celsius, so don't fuck too close. Furthermore, acetaldehyde happens to be the most abundant carcinogen in tobacco smoke. Carcinogen means that it can deliver free cancer to anyone. This good stuff is dissolved in saliva when you smoke the smoke you smoke while smoking a smoke. This acetaldehyde thing is found to reinforce nicotine dependence, mainly in teens. This might explain why adolescents are more vulnerable to cigarette addiction. Apparently, most smokers started at that age. Moreover, acetaldehyde causes damages to DNA. As it binds to proteins, it generates abnormal muscle development. The good stuff, I told you. On a different note, this nicotine should also significantly reduces the amount of REM sleep, aka rapid eye movement sleep. That's a biologically necessary and unique stage of sleep, in both mammals and birds, in which your eyes move fast along with sleepotonia. No, that's not some country over there, that's the low muscle tone, some paralysis state, happening all over the body while sleeping. And that's the very part of sleep time devoted to vivid dreams and shit, but mostly, of all memory consolidation. And nicotine fucks with this whole process. Probably because REM sleep is partly regulated by cholinergic neurons in the basal forebrain, which makes sense. So REM sleep deprivation can cause inhibited memory consolidation, mostly concerning complex processes. Besides, REM sleep loss, along with non-REM sleep loss, although exerting different effects, have been both proven to exacerbate Alzheimer's disease progression. You've been warned. Furthermore, according to Ohio State University, yeah, I drop names and shit, compared to non-smokers, middle-aged smokers are way more likely to report having, indeed, memory loss but also confusion, and a higher likelihood of cognitive decline. All along, among the 136,000 people tested, the prevalence of subjective cognitive decline was 1.9 higher in smokers than in non-smokers.
How come things that happen to stupid people keep happening to me?
Likewise, given that chemicals in cigarette smoke increases the buildup of plaque, mainly made of fat, calcium and some other stuff. This, in turn, will lead to some swelling, to some narrowing, to some inflammation of blood vessels. This can result in many vascular conditions, like plaque buildup in arteries and strokes and shit. So here's a quick recap on how and why cigarettes provide the proper ground for those vascular issues. This smoke you smoke raises your triglycerides, that's some kinda type of fat you have in your blood. Smoke lowers your good cholesterol, but not the bad one, obviously. Sounds good so far, but the tricky part is that your blood gets also thicker, stickier, then, of course, more prone to clot and clogging and shit. And then, blood flow to the heart and brain is disrupted, or even blocked in some capillary vessels. This impairment in providing regular blood flow to the brain, contributes, in turn, to cognitive impairments, like dementia. And it happens that vascular-related dementia types of shit are the second most common cause of cognitive decline in the world. Just FYI, the most common being Alzheimer's disease, of course. And indeed, many mucho extensive cohort-based studies found that, on the average, smoking tobacco is a major risk factor for cardiovascular diseases linked with higher risk of dementia and cognitive decline. Don't believe me? It's actually estimated that like around 14% of all dementia issues can be attributed to smoking. Don't believe me? Go check the links in the description below. And now get the fuck out of. No wait, we're not done yet. On the overall, smokers are even at a 30 to 40% increased risk for dementia. Many studies also found that quitting as soon as possible reduces the risks of dementia. Likewise, they found that current smokers on their 70s perform way more poorly on cognitive and memory tests. Actually, I think them studies are trying to say that it is better to quit like, the sooner the better, and then like, the later the worst, apparently, if I get it right. Furthermore, and on the average, current smokers, but former smokers as well, are at a way higher risk for alcohol drinking and illegal drug use. And here's a breaking news for you: you shouldn't mix coffee and cigarettes. Well, that's actually old news, but I found out about this one during the editing. Then, here it comes. On the average, coffee drinkers are more likely to enjoy a cigarette with it, because apparently it makes cigarettes more appealing. Go figure. But combining them can have gnarly side effects. Indeed, morning coffee boosts morning nicotine's effects and makes people more likely to get a heart attack. That's mainly because the combination of nicotine and caffeine makes your heart and arteries stiffer. And heart and artery stiffness is a common warning sign when diagnosing cardiovascular diseases, even in really young people. So you really shouldn't smoke, like ever. But wait, there's more. Cigarette consumption is associated with cortical thinning. And current smokers have indeed a significantly smaller total gray matter volume. The gray matter is this thing, which is mainly composed of neuron bodies, as opposed to white matter, which is mainly composed of fatty myelinated axons, aka the tail of the neuron, aka something you're supposed to know by now. This cortical thinning thing is a common biomarker of cognitive aging, which can persist for many years after smoking cessation. A phenomenon that can get even worse with alcohol, because when combined with booze, findings suggest that cigarettes could target more localized gray matter areas, like the temporal lobe, frontal lobe, insular cortex and of course, the infamous amygdala, as those brain areas could end up with altered volume. You should also consider not to smoke and drink either.
He just goes around imposing his will on people. He's my idol.
Besides, there's a combination of factors that can restrict growth as well. For example, when people smoke, they inhale carbon monoxide and hydrogen cyanide, lowering then the amount of available oxygen delivered to cells around the body, which fucks with cell growth. Likewise, the many chemicals in cigarettes also interfere with the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is a stack of nuclei that stimulates or inhibits hormone release from the pituitary gland. Hormones, like growth hormone for example. So growth could be impaired in younger smokers. And as smoking can suppress appetite, teenage smokers may not get enough nutrients from their meals, once again impairing optimal growth. So if I had to sum up the last bunches of lines you heard in this video, the sooner you start smoking, the shorter and the dumber you'll get later in life. Think about that. One last thing, I guess, smoking is shown to lower the concentration of oxygen in tissues, the very oxygen that is also required to produce collagen, an important protein in wound healing. Therefore smoking is also fucking with the whole body repair processes. Unfortunately, while the previously described nasty effects of smoking may take a while to notice, adverse side effects, like in the lungs or heart, are more likely to be perceived first. But remember, there's way worse lurking underneath the surface of the headpiece.
Wait till you try it after a meal. Delicious. And after sex, forget about it. It's like putting your penis to sleep in a feather bed.
And as usual, don't forget that more research is needed. I don't know how to conclude this video, so as stupid as it sounds, don't smoke.
It's a trap!
And that's on this advice of a lifetime that I'll end this episode and give you the usual. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, or I think I will start to kill babies or some shit. See you next time. Peace.
Don't forget this.